It was quiet on the street as a veteran hero walked home after a long day of work. He was looking for some INR to relax, and he headed to his usual bar. Inside the bar, people were waiting for an important broadcast. The veteran hero was a regular here, though he didn't make as much money today as others. Still, he had arrived just in time for a big event being shown all over the world. The Commonwealth was voting on whether to punish the world's most famous hero. The votes were counted. 325 votes in favor of punishment, 0 votes against, and no one abstained. The decision was clear. The President of Parliament stood up and spoke to the accused hero, who went by the code name Mask. The President read the charges. Mask was accused of many crimes, massacres during the war, wrongfully imprisoning and executing over 30,000 people during the purge of the upper ranks of the Commonwealth, attacking friendly nations, and causing a terrible food shortage in the north. The President said that, because of these crimes, Mask should be sentenced to death. But, despite these horrible actions, Mask had been useful to the world. The leaders of the Commonwealth didn't want to lose his power in case of another alien invasion, so they decided to give him a chance to continue serving. Mask would still be a special hero, but with new rules. He could only hold 2 positions, Supreme Leader or Supreme Marshal of the Commonwealth. If the world was ever threatened again, he would have to return to fight for humanity's survival. Meanwhile, in the bar, people were talking about the decision. Older people knew the truth. They understood that without Mask, the world wouldn't be here. Mask had helped protect humanity and trained other heroes, making the world a safer place. But some younger people thought that Mask wasn't needed anymore. They believed humanity could survive without him. They also believed that the people in power had influenced them to think this way. Some still remembered the day of the invasion. The heroes had failed to protect the world, but Mask stood alone and fought, saving everyone. However, some people resented him for not moving on from the past. They thought he was stuck in the darkness of the past, believing that there would be another invasion and that the world wasn't safe yet. Mask even hinted that some of the world's greatest heroes were secretly working with the enemies trying to destroy humanity. In the halls of the Commonwealth, Mask was faced with a difficult choice. He had already done a lot to help humanity. But now, the people who were grateful for his past actions were also blaming him for his crimes. The President told him he could keep his honor, but Mask should be thankful for this offer. The President saw this as a chance to make Mask an example for others, to show that he was just a relic of the past. He would be exiled from society and forgotten. The President hoped that Mask would accept this punishment and fade away. But Mask wasn't listening to the President. He started to question what was going on. He had died before in a sneak attack. This felt like a flashback to his past life, when his companions betrayed him. Suddenly, a voice inside his head offered him a second chance. He could choose a new path, either continue being a hero or become something else. A system appeared in his mind, giving him 2 choices, either the hero's path or the monster's path. The first path would make him continue protecting humanity, even though people couldn't understand him. The second path would make him a monster, with no connection to humanity, and he would have to live in the darkness, far from the people who had once relied on him. He chose the monster's path, deciding to leave the world of heroes behind. Back at the Parliament, the President grew impatient. He expected Mask to bend to their will, but Mask didn't speak. The President knew they had tried to ruin Mask's reputation and turn the people against him. They wanted to make sure he was seen as a relic of the past. But Mask wasn't giving in. Finally, Mask spoke. He said he would give up his title of special hero. The President was shocked. He had expected Mask to fight back and resist, but instead, he was letting go of everything. The people in the bar were also surprised. Some understood what was happening, while others were confused. They couldn't believe that the world's most powerful hero would just give up. The President, however, thought that if Mask gave up his title, his power would belong to the world, and he could finally move on. The President tried to push Mask into giving up his power for good, but Mask didn't care. He raised his arm and released all his energy. The room was filled with power, and people were forced to bow down to it. The President struggled to stay standing, but Mask's power was too strong. The energy shot up to the sky, causing lightning to strike across the city. It was a shocking display of power. People who were watching at home were stunned. Some thought a king-class monster had arrived. But after a few minutes, the power started to fade. The President, now the strongest person in the room, finally stood tall. Mask, once the greatest hero, was now just an ordinary man. He turned away from the President, smiling. His power didn't define him. He was ready for a new life. As he walked out of the Parliament building, he dropped his mask and left it behind. The President was left in shock, unsure of what had just happened. The portal cast a soft blue glow on the walls of the secret room. A group called the Steel Cutting Squad stepped through, led by their captain, who explained their goal. All the members were above level 2, making them strong enough to easily handle the smaller monsters. The final boss was level 3, but with their teamwork, it wouldn't be a problem. The captain joked about whether anyone in the group was afraid of spiders, glancing at the 2 women in the team. They were annoyed by his teasing, but the other members urged him to focus. Everyone wanted to finish quickly so they could watch the trial of the great hero, Mask, unfold in the real world. This secret realm was less crowded than usual because most people were watching the broadcast, giving the squad a perfect chance to clear it. Suddenly, someone else stepped through the portal. The group noticed something strange about him. He didn't have any equipment. The newcomer, who had recently lost all his powers, felt a mix of nostalgia and disbelief. He hadn't been in a low-level secret realm since his early days as a hero. Back then, he faced dangerous places where failure meant summoning terrifying demon gods. But now, he was starting over, back at level 1. His stats showed his current status: level 1, alignment, neutral, monster component, none. He wasn't sure if choosing the path of a monster was the right decision, but he was determined to try something new this time. The group's captain approached the stranger with curiosity. He asked why the newcomer had no weapons, but Mask confidently replied, "My fists are all I need." The captain assumed he was a martial artist but wanted to know more. If this person was a high-level professional, he could be competition for the squad's loot. However, they were shocked when the newcomer revealed he was only level 1. The captain laughed nervously, relieved that the stranger wasn't a threat. "You can't be serious. Coming here as a level 1 is suicide," he said. The others felt sorry for the young man, thinking he was naive. They advised him to stay in the room for his safety and warned they wouldn't save him if he got into trouble. As the group left, the youngest woman is unhappy with how the captain had treated the newcomer. The squad quickly fought their way to the spider cave. The older women cast powerful fireballs, the archer provided cover, and the lancer and captain fought side by side. They were a well-coordinated team. Mask stayed behind, observing the group. The woman named Yen Qianqian approached him and apologized for the captain's behavior. She explained that the captain wasn't a bad person, he just wanted to protect the stranger from danger. She also warned that this secret realm wasn't easy, especially for someone so underprepared. Mask smiled and commented on how much the world had changed since his time. People were more cautious now, and the cooperation among professionals had improved. Yen agreed, saying that the hero Mask's policies had made a big difference. His efforts had reduced the death rate and allowed more professionals to thrive. Realizing she'd been talking a lot, Yen introduced herself. "She is a level 2 healer. I'm Xiao Qiu, a level 1 professional," Mask replied. "I haven't chosen my career path yet." Yen was surprised. She thought his physique wasn't suited for close-range combat and suggested he focus on spellcasting. But when Mask gave her an intense look, she realized she might have overstepped. Before she could apologize, a spider attacked. Yan's teammates wouldn't make it in time, but Mask acted quickly. He grabbed Yan's arm, pulling her out of harm's way. In one swift motion, he ripped off the spider's leg and used it to stab the creature through its eye, killing it instantly. The spider collapsed, while Yen held Mask's body in shock. The rest of the group was stunned by the Mask's skills. The Lancer explained that he had never seen a martial artist do something like this. The young man had crushed the spider's weak spot and, in one smooth motion, pushed it through its eye socket. Only someone with an understanding of monster anatomy and perfect control over their own body could pull off such a move. Yen got embarrassed and quickly backed away from him. Mask was surprised to find that choosing the path of a monster was similar to the hero's path. That one kill had earned him 500 experience points. He now knew that leveling up by killing monsters would be easy. In his past life, this was how he had become a high-level professional. With the fighting experience he had gained, it would be even faster this time. The captain approached him, apologizing for misjudging him. He thanked Mask for saving Yen and offered him an equal share of the rewards once the mission was complete. The group continued forward, working together to complete the mission. Before long, they had reached the boss. Their plan was simple: the captain would be the fighter, the mage would burn away the spider webs during the battle, and the rest would focus on dealing damage. The group moved so quickly and they hoped to finish just in time to catch the end of the trial. The Lancer wasn't concerned about the trial. He believed the hero, Mask, would be found guilty. He was more curious about what Mask really looked like. No one knew the true identity of Mask, and they spent a bit of time speculating. However, they managed to irritate Yen, who was a fan of Mask. She defended him, knowing all the details of what everyone called the Mask Massacre. She believed Mask had done his best under difficult circumstances. The Lancer teased her, asking if she was one of those paid actors pretending to support Mask. The captain scolded the group, telling them they were embarrassing themselves. They all turned their attention to the challenge ahead. The area was filled with spider webs. Some of the group members were more interested in valuable loot, while others eyed the treasure chest left behind. "Prepare yourselves," the captain said as the boss spider charged at them. The captain rushed in to grab its attention. The damage dealers quickly searched for weak spots. Mask was surprised by how unintelligent the boss spider was. He figured he would end the fight quickly. Meanwhile, the mage kept the webs under control, the archer protected the mage, and the healer focused on keeping the captain alive. The teamwork was flawless, and the boss spider didn't stand a chance. It fell quickly. The captain looked around and reminded everyone that they would all get an equal share of the rewards, and they wouldn't forget Mask. Meanwhile, Mask is confused. He didn't understand why they kept calling this a level 3 secret realm when his system clearly indicated it was a level 4 realm. Then, something strange happened. The treasure chest didn't appear. Instead, a mysterious figure emerged from the shadows. It was a girl wearing a school uniform and a strange astronaut helmet. She didn't seem dangerous, so the Lancer decided to deal with her quickly. As the girl stumbled toward them, her toes gripping the ground as she ran, the Lancer prepared to attack. No one expected the attack to land, but when she came within range, the Lancer stabbed her. Pink fluid spread everywhere as she fell. The Lancer's spear went right through the astronaut girl and came out the other side. Everyone thought he had won. He got ready to finish her off, but something strange happened. Sticky spider webs came out of the hole in her chest and wrapped around his arms. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't break free. Then, without any effort, the girl broke both of his arms like they were nothing. The webs were so strong no one could cut them. The captain told the mage to burn the webs with fire. The archer ran in to save the Lancer, but the fire suddenly grew wild, as if the monster was making it stronger. When the fire died down, everyone saw something terrifying. The astronaut girl was no longer human. She had turned into a giant spider with 8 legs. Everyone was scared and shocked, everyone except Mask. The Lancer, still trapped by the webs, tried to run, but he couldn't move well. He was too slow. The spider stabbed one of her sharp legs straight through his chest. The Lancer looked down at the leg and realized he was going to die. The archer got angry and tried to attack the spider, but Mask grabbed his arm. "Don't do it," Mask said. "If you attack her now, you'll die next." The archer turned to argue, but the captain spoke up. "Listen to him," the captain said. "We've already lost one person. Don't make it worse." The captain then made a new plan. They had moved too fast through the secret realm, so they still had 3 hours before the portal would open. They had to fight carefully and move slowly back toward the entrance. Once the portal opened, they could escape. But the spider didn't wait. She attacked again. This time, she aimed for the captain. Sticky silk shot out of her wound and wrapped tightly around his arm. The archer fired arrows at her, but she was too fast. She wrapped him up in webs in seconds. The captain screamed as the spider pulled the archer toward her. As he got closer, her mouth opened wide, showing sharp teeth. The spider bit off the archer's head and dropped his body to the ground. The captain was furious. He charged at the spider with his sword. But when he swung his blade, the spider blocked it with one of her legs. The captain couldn't believe it. A level 4 monster wasn't supposed to be this strong. The spider started pulling the captain toward her. Mask stepped forward and said, "Give me your sword. The only way to save you is to cut off your arm. If you want to live, trust me." The captain didn't take long to decide. He threw his sword to Mask. Mask caught it and swung hard, cutting off the captain's arm just below the elbow. The captain screamed in pain, but Mask had saved his life. Mask and the captain moved to a safe spot while Yen, the healer, quickly ran to stop the captain's bleeding. Suddenly, the mage started screaming. "I don't want to die here," she shouted, running away in panic. Yen turned to Mask. "Why aren't you running too? You have to run." But Mask stayed calm. "I let her go," he said. "A boss like that loves chasing its prey. Fear makes it stronger, like candy to a monster like her." Yen didn't understand what Mask meant. He explained that the spider was a special kind of monster called a god chosen. These monsters were picked by powerful beings from the void and given extreme strength and strange appearances. They fed on human emotions like fear, anger, and jealousy. To Mask, a god chosen wasn't that impressive. He had fought and killed many of them before. In fact, the first secret realm he ever entered had a god chosen as the boss. The spider boss started releasing a purple mist into the air. Yen quickly cast a spell to protect the group from poison, but the mist wasn't poison, it was spiritual energy. The mage couldn't handle it and collapsed. One by one, everyone else fainted except for Mask. Yen didn't know it, but this was Mask's chance. Now that everyone was unconscious, he could use his real power. The spider boss, now in her true form, was surprised when Mask appeared right next to her. Even though he had given up most of his strength, his spirit and soul were still as powerful as a level 14 hero. The spider's spiritual power was nothing compared to his. The purple mist activated Mask's system, unlocking a new ability for him. Smirking, he told the spider, "Thanks to your attack, I can finally fight you properly. A lowly god chosen like you should feel honored to face me." The spider tried to use her spiritual energy to intimidate him, but it didn't work. Mask dashed forward at lightning speed, slicing off one of her legs in a single strike. The spider panicked and shot Sticky Silk in all directions to trap him, but Mask was too fast for such a simple attack. "I expected more from you," he said. "But you're only level 4. This fight is already over." Mask ran along the walls, dodging her attacks with ease. He launched a flurry of strikes, cutting off her legs one by one until only one was left. The spider tried to hop away on her last leg, but Mask quickly put an end to that. "You're not going anywhere," he said, slicing off the final leg. Now completely defenseless, the spider tried to crawl away. Mask stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You enjoyed playing with humans, didn't you?" he asked coldly. "But now it's your turn to lose." With a final stomp, he crushed her head, ending the fight. The system's voice echoed in his mind, "Level 4 Secret Realm, Mother Spider Hatcherness raid complete. Mission rewards issued, spider leg. Survivors will be teleported out." Back in the city, life went on as usual. People bustled through the streets, unaware of the danger Mask and the others had just faced. Yen wandered through the streets, still shaken from what had happened. It had been over 2 hours since she was teleported out of the secret realm. The captain was in the hospital, and Yen and the mage were left to go home on their own. She didn't know if Mask had survived. Just as she thought about him, he appeared, standing right in front of her. After defeating the spider boss, Mask was teleported to Day City. However, he faced a big problem: he had no money. In his past life, he was so powerful that money wasn't something he worried about. Now, he was completely broke. He tried renting a room but couldn't even afford the cheapest one. Mask also didn't know much about how modern society worked, which made things harder. He realized surviving in this world would not be easy. Luckily, help came in an unexpected way. While Mask was thinking about his situation, he heard someone calling his name. It was Yen, the healer from the secret realm. At first, Mask didn't remember her name, which annoyed her. "Don't call me that, healer. My name is Yen." "Don't forget it," she said. Yen was happy to see Mask alive. Since she owed him her life, she invited him to stay at her house. As they walked to her home, she told him about the city's history. Today's city was only 40 years old. It had been built after a major disaster destroyed the original city. The rapid rebuilding had turned the area into an urban village. When they arrived at Yan's home, she told Mask he wouldn't be an inconvenience and that he would have his own room. Mask noticed a medal hanging by the entryway. Yen explained it belonged to her father, who was a hero during the Great Disaster. He had been a level 5 melee professional and fought in many battles. Yan's father loved telling stories about how he fought side by side with the Mask, a legendary hero. They were so close, they even shared food from the same pot. Yen said. However, she wasn't sure if the stories were true. Her father had been a heavy drinker and liked making up tales. The Mask described in those stories didn't match the Mask everyone knew. Yen told Mask her father had passed away. Even though his body healed after the war, his soul never recovered. He died shortly after leaving the army. When Mask asked about her mother, Yen explained she had passed away giving birth to her younger sister. "Don't give me that sad look," Yen said firmly. "That's all in the past. Look at me, I'm living just fine." She showed Mask around the house and added, "I'll get you a blanket, but you'll have to buy your own pajamas and clothes." As they talked, a young girl in a wheelchair rolled into the room. This was Yan's little sister. She didn't look happy to see Mask. "So, big sister, you're bringing strangers into our house now," she said sarcastically before leaving the room. Yen sighed and reassured Mask. "Don't mind her. She'll warm up to you eventually. She's just upset because someone she admires is being treated unfairly." Yan's sister was angry because the Mask, her hero, was being insulted online. People were calling him a selfish coward who had abandoned his duty to protect humanity. Many claimed he had only pretended to give up his powers and had secretly teleported away. Reading these comments made Yan's sister furious. She believed the Mask was misunderstood. "How can people lie to themselves like this?" she muttered, typing furiously on her keyboard. The Mask sacrificed everything for humanity, and this is how they repay him. While she argued with people online, Mask and Yen sat down for dinner. The meal was simple, but Mask appreciated it. He was used to eating whatever he could find, so this felt like a luxury. Yen talked about how the news kept spreading lies about the mask. Everyone wants to forget how much he did for humanity, she said angrily. They'd rather pretend they don't owe him anything. Just as they were finishing dinner, shouting came from outside the house. Yen explained that Kaijiang Investment had been harassing her family. They've been threatening to burn their house down with them inside. Yen rushed outside to face the men who had come to threaten her. Yen stayed calm and replied firmly that she would never sell her family's home. She had been honest with them from the start, but the men were quick to bring up her personal situation. They talked about the tragedy that had happened to her as well as her team earlier that day. One of them, a mage skilled in mind tricks, told her they would give her 5 days before starting to harass her family. They also reduced their offer for the house from $3 million to just $100,000 federal dollars. Yen didn't care. She knew they were relying on illegal information, but no matter what, she would never sell. The men, however, knew that she needed money for her little sister's treatment. They were aware that her bank account only had $30,000 in it. Still, Yen wasn't scared. She would figure it out. At that moment, Mask decided it was time to step in. He walked forward. One of the men, assuming Mask was Yan's boyfriend, stepped forward and introduced himself with a smile, reaching out his hand. Yen quickly warned Mask, "Don't shake his hand. He's a mage who specializes in mental attacks." But it was too late. Mask had already shaken the mage's hand. The mage was confident he could mess with Mask's mind, but as soon as their hands touched, he felt something was wrong. Instead of getting control, he found himself sinking into a dark, endless ocean. He got panicked as a massive wave of mental energy crashed over him. He tried to escape, but it was too late. The mage was trapped in Mask's overwhelming mental power, as well as something terrifying spread beneath the surface. He realized that he would not be waking up anytime soon. The other men froze, fear spreading through them. One of them pulled his friend away and said, "You really think you can fight someone who just defeated our leader? We need to leave now." They quickly retreated, while giving warning that they got lucky this time. But if they attack any of their people again, next time won't be so easy. Yen turned to Mask, concerned. "Did you put him in a coma?" she asked. Mask shook his head as well as explained, "Not exactly. He forced his way into my mental world, and this was just the result of his actions." Yen breathed heavily and looked down. They've been harassing them for years. Ever since her father died. Back then, they would bang on the door as well as threaten her little sister when she wasn't around. When she became a level 2 healer and joined the captain's team, they stayed away. But now, after what happened to her team, they didn't even wait a day before trying to attack again. Mask asked, "Why doesn't the government help you?" Yen shook her head sadly, saying the government is supposed to help families of soldiers who fought in the Great War. But they only care about the rich. People like them don't matter to them later. As they cleaned up after dinner, Yen told Mask, "You don't need to help with the dishes." Mask smiled as well as replied, "It's the least I can do. You're letting me stay here, feeding me, so I want to help with anything I can." Yen smiled back. She believes he has already helped enough. He saved her life and protected her home. She owe him so much. Mask then asked, "What will you do now? Will you join a new team?" Yen looked thoughtful. "I hope the captain wakes up. If not, I'll have to find a new team. But life in the secret realms isn't easy. Teams fight over resources, and some even betray their own members." The Mask did his best to stop these things with rules, but people still broke them. She then added, "If I find a team, I'll recommend you." Mask shook his head, knowing how difficult it would be for him. "No one will stand by me in battle. The path I'm on will be a lonely one." Just then, a message appeared in his mind. Task, Night Dweller, Level 4 Secret Realm. Description, this task isn't too hard, but it may have unexpected rewards. Requirements, clear the secret realm alone. Time left to prepare, 12 hours. Mask smiled. A new challenge awaited him. A portal opened inside a dark, old church. Mask walked through, ready for action. Thanks to the system, he could enter dungeons anytime and from anywhere. This let him skip the official process, making his missions faster. He looked around as well as guessed that this dungeon was styled after medieval Europe. In front of him were 2 large gargoyle statues. But Mask knew these weren't just statues, they were enemies. As he stepped closer, the gargoyles tore themselves free from their stone perches, preparing to fight. The system identified them, Scarlet Gargoyles, Level 3. These creatures looked like statues when inactive, but when someone entered their space, they became fierce beasts. Their stone-like bodies gave them high defense, and their sharp fangs were deadly. Gargoyles were a tough enemy. Physical as well as magical attacks barely worked on them, making them a nightmare for most adventurers. A weaker team would have been destroyed in seconds. But Mask was different. He smiled, ready for the challenge. Before the gargoyles could attack, Mask moved. He grabbed both creatures by their heads and crushed them in his hands like they were nothing. What a waste of time, he believed. Suddenly, the stained glass windows in the church lit up, casting colorful light everywhere. More gargoyles started moving, ripping themselves free from the walls as well as ceilings. An entire army of them filled the air. Mask didn't flinch. "Bring it," he said, leaping into the air to fight them. The battle was challenging. Gargoyles swooped down from all directions, but Mask was faster. He punched, kicked, and slashed through the monsters. Stone fell off and rubble covered the ground as the defeated creatures fell one by one. Finally, there was only one gargoyle left. Mask grabbed it by its wings and stared into its lifeless eyes. Then, he tore it apart like it was paper, dropping the pieces to the ground. Just as the fight ended, the boss appeared. The system identified it: Leader Luck, Stone Statue, Level 4. This statue looked different from the gargoyles. It was more detailed, carefully crafted, and clearly powerful. Its presence filled the room with a heavy, intimidating energy. Mask attacked. The fight was quick as well as brutal. The boss was strong, but Mask was stronger. Moments later, the stone leader lay defeated, its own spear driven through its chest. Mask looked at the rubble around him, satisfied with his work, and disappeared from the dungeon. Not long after, Yan's team of 4 adventurers entered the church. They were professionals who thought they were the first ones to explore this dungeon. One of them got confused as he looked around. The church was in ruins. Stone pieces covered the ground, as well as the air felt heavy. "This doesn't make sense," one of them said. "This dungeon only appeared 12 hours ago. How could it already be destroyed? They were supposed to be the first team here." Another adventurer picked up a piece of rubble and examined it closely. "Look at this," he said, holding up the pieces. "It's broken as if someone ripped it apart with their bare hands. Who could do something like this?" The group looked around, confused. One of them pointed toward the center of the church. There, they saw the boss, Leader Luck. Its massive stone body was pinned against a pillar, pierced through the chest with its own spear. The adventurers stared in shock. The group stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do next. The dungeon they had planned to conquer had already been cleared, as well as the mysterious person who did it was nowhere to be found. Now at Secret Realm Inspection Bureau, the boss was furious. Reports were coming in that dungeons were being cleared before official teams had a chance to enter them. No one knew what was happening. At best, someone was failing at their job, but at worst, someone inside the bureau was helping an intruder. They needed to figure out how this person was avoiding their surveillance. To outsiders, it might seem like a good thing that someone was clearing dangerous dungeons. But the bureau knew better. What if this individual decided to ambush official teams in the future? Before the bureau was established, secret realms were challenging. The number one cause of death wasn't monsters, it was other humans. Greed as well as desperation made people turn on each other. The bureau's job was to make sure the world never returned to those barbaric times. The first case happened at a level 4 gargoyle dungeon. Based on the evidence, it seemed like a single person was responsible. The destruction left behind suggested someone between level 4 and level 5 strength. Since the intruder couldn't carry all the loot from so many dungeons, the bureau decided to focus on the market. They would look for patterns in sales matching the spoils of the 7 dungeons already cleared and report back immediately. This plan wouldn't work on Mask. He didn't care about money. He only sold materials to stay self-sufficient as well as avoid being a burden to Yen. As soon as he thought about her, he saw her trying to sell a sword to a shady merchant. She wasn't a great negotiator. She told the man the blade had a rich history and had slain many monsters. But he used that against her, saying the scratches made it worthless and offering only 3,500. The sword, named Flying Crow, was a relic from her father, but she had to sell it to pay her sister's medical bills. The merchant, thinking he had struck gold, hurried her to finalize the deal. The sword was made from ember iron, a rare as well as valuable material, and he planned to resell it for at least 10,000. Mask stepped in before the deal was done. Yen was surprised to see him but figured he was also there for trades. Mask's system identified the sword as a level 5 professional long blade made of rare materials and stained with the blood of a demon god. "Yen, sell the sword to me," Mask said. Without waiting for her response, he paid her the full amount. The merchant, realizing he had lost, got mad. Later, Mask and Yen sat on a bench, holding their new items. Yen felt guilty about taking money from Mask, who had already saved her life. But Mask insisted she keep it, saying it was for letting him stay with her and cooking him delicious meals. In truth, Mask knew the sword was worth far more than what he had paid. Yen shared the sword's history. "Do you know about the Great Ghost incident here in Day City? A level 10 monster escaped from a secret realm and rampaged for hours. It killed countless people and destroyed half the city. My father was one of the heroes who fought it. He died in the battle, and all we have left of him is Flying Crow." She continued, "The monster emitted radiation that turned everything green, clouds, buildings, as well as even people. Ordinary citizens melted into pools of flesh. My sister was lucky to survive, though she lost the use of her legs. She was a talented swordswoman, destined to surpass our father. But now, we use what little money we have to pay professionals to stop the radiation from spreading. Mask listened silently. He thought about how monsters had ruined so many lives. After that incident, the federal government should have allocated funds to help victims like your sister. Have you checked if she's eligible for assistance? Yen was shocked. I didn't know there might be support for her. Let's go home, I feel like a weight has been lifted. I'll cook you my best meal tonight. As they left, Mask passed 2 inspectors from the bureau. They were investigating the recent dungeon infiltrations, unaware that the culprit was standing right beside them. Back home, Yan's sister Qianlu was taking a break from arguing online. Suddenly, someone began banging on their door. Yan knew it had to be people from the Kaijiang Investment Company. She wasn't afraid, she had faced worse. But this time, Mask was with her, as well as she was ready for whatever came next. Qianlu didn't have legs, but that didn't stop her from protecting her family's home. She grabbed her weapon, rolled herself to the front gate, and faced the intruders. When they saw her, they laughed. Determined, Qianlu attacked, her spirit unshaken. But it wasn't enough. She fell to the ground after a brief fight, glaring up at them. The leader grinned cruelly. Search the house. Trash it if you have to, he ordered. They will teach that guy who injured their man a lesson, he won't forget. They searched but found nothing of value. One of the men suggested kidnapping Qianlu, but another quickly pointed out the risk of getting caught. Then the guy decided to make it look like an accident. He told one of his men to back their garbage truck into the property. It's full of trash from the neighborhood bins anyway. Perfect timing. The group laughed as they prepared to leave. Meanwhile, Yen and Mask were walking home in the rain. A sudden storm had soaked them, but they hurried forward, eager to get out of the rain. As they got closer, Yen stopped. Her heart sank at the sight of the broken gate and Qianlu lying on the ground. Qianlu, she screamed, rushing over to her. With Mask's help, they lifted Qianlu back into her wheelchair. Yen knelt beside her. What happened? Qianlu told them everything. Her hands grabbed the sides of her chair as she spoke. Yen then stood and faced the ruined gate. He ordered Mask to take Qianlu inside. She will fix the gate. Just then, a loud crash made them both turn. The garbage truck came into the property, dumping its load right in front of Yen. The leader leaned out of the truck window. Oops, my bad, he said mockingly. I thought this was the garbage dump. Well, at least it's raining, he told Yen that she can clean herself off. He laughed as the truck pulled away loudly saying expect more gifts from the Kaijiang company. Yen stood still, her fists shaking. Mask held Qianlu back when she tried to go to her sister. Yen walked forward, she looked furious and helpless. Watching from behind, Qianlu whispered, why is this happening? Is there any justice in the world? Mask stood silent for a moment. No, he finally said. What about in the future? She asked, almost pleading. Don't count on it, he replied. There has to be some fairness, Qianlu insisted. Mask gripped the hilt of his sword. Fairness is just another lie. Even the rain, something that falls on everyone, is unfair. It falls on the innocent and the guilty alike. This world is broken, and the rain reflects that. Qianlu felt helpless. She couldn't accept the harsh truth Mask spoke. Mask looked at her and sighed. He believed her family's troubles are small in the grand scheme of things. He shouldn't care about all this, it's not his fight. But trouble always seems to follow him. He shook his head. What a waste of time. Where are you going? Qianlu asked as Mask started to walk away. He glanced back. I've got trash to take out. You can't be serious, she cried. That company is dangerous. Their boss is a level 5, and they have plenty of strong fighters. Don't put yourself in danger for us. Mask chuckled softly. Yeah, it's a hassle. But there's only one way to deal with people like them, smash their skulls. He paused, almost talking to himself. Why do I always resort to violence to solve my problems? Without another word, he stepped into the rain, heading straight for the Kaijiang company's headquarters. The storm was strong, raining heavily over the city of Day. The streets were empty, making it the perfect time for trouble. The Kaijiang company's tall building stood in the distance. Mask walked through the empty streets, his eyes focused on the building. 2 men, dressed in expensive clothes, walked out of the building, laughing, not noticing the danger. Mask stopped and looked up at the building. He walked toward the entrance, holding his sword tightly. The security guard saw him right away. They smirked and walked toward him, excited to fight. Do you know where you are? One of them asked. You can't bring a weapon in here. Mask didn't answer. He didn't care about them. He kept walking. When the guards tried to stop him, he didn't stop. In just a few seconds, 2 guards dropped to the floor, dead. A new mission appeared, Blood Sacrificial Blade. Description: the sword Flying Crow gets stronger when it kills more enemies. Mission objective: kill all enemies with Flying Crow. Reward: sword upgrade. More guards ran out, ready to stop him. They had katanas, and they surrounded Mask. He's dangerous, one of them shouted. Be careful. 2 guards attacked Mask at once, trying to hurt him. Mask didn't even move. The 2 guards' heads fell off, and their bodies hit the ground. The 3rd guard was more careful. He used his sword with aura to try to hurt Mask. Mask didn't waste time. He cut off the man's arm and then stabbed his sword into his side. The other guards attacked, but Mask didn't need his sword anymore. He punched them, breaking their chests. How is he so strong without his sword? One guard gasped before he died. Mask kept moving, leaving the guards behind. Inside the Kaijiang building, some members of the Yakuza were talking about making money. If we redevelop the Yan's property, we'll make a lot of money, one said with a smile. Suddenly, one of the underlings came in, looking scared. Someone is killing everyone in the building, he yelled. The leader raised an eyebrow. How many are attacking? It's just one person, the underling stammered. 1 person? The leader didn't think it was possible. He's crazy. But the leader wasn't so sure. He stood up and grabbed a big axe. Before he could leave, Mask walked in. Without saying a word, he killed the underling who was begging for his life. Everyone in the room froze in fear. The leader quickly gathered his team, a mage, a warrior, and a gunner. We're level 4 professionals, he said. Let's show him what that means. Mask looked at them. Level 4, huh? Not bad. The mage looked at Mask and said, he knows we are strong. The gunner added, this is the guy who put their guy in a coma. Realizing that this man was dangerous, Mask prepared himself. Time to become a monster, he muttered. Then, the lights turned off, and everything went dark. He thinks darkness will help? The gunner laughed, activating his night vision ability. The gunner froze in fear. Standing in front of him was a monster. Inside the Kaijian Company building, chaos started. Joseph, the gunner, was the first to die. His night vision ability, once helpful, only showed how terrifying Mask's approach was. Mask killed him easily, and his blood spread across the floor. The other men quickly realized something was wrong. The storm outside flashed with lightning, showing Mask's shadow. The leader barely blocked a blow from Mask, shivering with fear. The mage saw his chance. He summoned a giant ice spike and threw it at Mask. Mask quickly cut it down, annoyed. The mage paid the price for interrupting the battle. In one fast move, Mask cut off the mage's head. The leader was next. Mask's sword, covered in blood, ended him with a single strike. Reinforcements should have turned back, but they were too foolish to understand. Mask didn't stop. He kept moving, leaving destruction behind. Finally, the Kaijian Company's boss came out. Mask smelled the air and recognized the scent of a strong fighter, a rank 6 professional. Maybe this man would be a real challenge. The boss quickly realized Mask wasn't a demon, and there were no signs of transformation. He was powerful, and that made the boss nervous. The boss grinned, thinking that whether Mask was dead or alive, his body would make up for the losses the company had taken today. Without warning, the fencer disappeared and appeared in front of Mask, ready to fight. The battle began. The fencer attacked Mask with fast, sharp strikes, his sword moving like lightning. But Mask's armor easily blocked each attack. The fencer started getting frustrated. He decided to end it all with a close attack to Mask's chest. The fencer smiled, thinking he had won. But Mask dodged, stepping right into the fencer's trap. In a flash, the fencer pulled out a Python 357 revolver and aimed it at Mask's face. This was the fencer's secret weapon. It was so powerful that no one had ever survived its shot. The fencer wished he could take Mask alive, but he would settle for his corpse. When the smoke cleared, Mask stood there, unharmed. His face showed nothing but anger, and he was more terrifying than ever. The fencer had made a big mistake. The fencer realized things were going horribly wrong. There was no way anyone could avoid that attack unless they already knew it was coming. He wondered how Mask had predicted his move. "Who are you?" he asked. "How could you know?" Mask replied calmly, "The 19th Reaper style?" The fencer was shocked. He had never seen anyone use the Reaper style in such an unexpected way. Mask had created this style himself. It was easy to learn, and anyone could master it with enough time and effort. However, there was one rule: only those who walked the path of righteousness could use it. "What business does it have to do with a monster like you?" the guy asked angrily. "This is the style Mask created. Can't you see? I'm using it to destroy a monster like you. Isn't that righteous?" Mask smiled coldly. "Your entire corporation is built on destroying innocent families. The guy don't care about hurting anyone, but he made it clear that the progress of human society moves forward. Any force that tries to stop it, whether it's demons or even humans themselves, will be destroyed. His path has always been righteous. He believed a monster like Mask wouldn't understand. The guy rushed forward, attacking Mask with a series of quick moves. The attacks surrounded him, but Mask didn't look scared. Instead, he took out a stronger weapon to show the guy the true power of the Reaper style. With his first move, Mask dodged, and with his second, he landed a powerful strike. Then, a storm of attacks followed, showing just how deadly Mask was. The guy felt a sharp pain as he realized what was happening. He had underestimated Mask. Who's the real monster here? Mask muttered as the guy struggled. Xiao drew his new weapon, a blade called Bloodraven. This was a special sword, one that could grow stronger with each fight. It had tasted the blood of many demons and now had a power all its own. Mask could feel its power growing as he held it. The Bloodraven sword was unique. It was not just a weapon, but something that could grow with its user. It could also send out a powerful wave of blood energy that could tear through anything in its path. Mask grinned. So, you're not Flying Crow anymore. You're Bloodraven, huh? I see you haven't changed much, but you still crave power. Mask found a weak enemy and used his sword to send out a blast that tore through a skyscraper. The battle had gotten bigger, and now even the military was involved. This company had powerful backers, so it was no surprise that the military was now stepping in. They were blocking all exits and preparing to move in. The military commander, Jiang, had a job to do. He wanted to limit the number of casualties, so he ordered all attempts to stop the fight peacefully. Jiang knew that not everyone in the building was innocent. The federal government was the one that should judge the criminals, not random people. So, he ordered that no one inside the building would be allowed to escape, no matter what their excuse was. Meanwhile, Mask left the building and surrendered. The news quickly reached Yen, who rushed to find Mask. Qianla had told Yen what was going on, and she was worried for him. Before she could get to the yard, soldiers arrived at her home to question her. The soldier told him they are investigating this man. Is he an acquaintance of hers? Yen's heart raced. She feared that Mask was in trouble because of her family's issues. She got worried and asked about him being alive, and to her surprise the soldier told him he is not just alive but he is in good health as well. Mask sat quietly in the Civil Defense Army's prison, refusing to cooperate with the investigation. Despite their best efforts, the officials had not been able to get any useful information from him. All they had was his admission of guilt. The investigation team had been unable to track him down or find any real details about him. Our investigation has turned up nothing. This man is like a ghost, one officer reported. We looked into the name he gave us, Xiao Qiu, and it led to a woman named Yen. That's where things got interesting. The investigation uncovered a lead with the Monitoring Bureau, who had been tracking a mysterious thief capable of bypassing all their detection systems. They believed Mask could be the person they were searching for. This thief sounds like quite a mystery, one officer commented. What do we know about Yen? She's a level 2 healer, the officer replied. Her father was a retired level 5 professional who served in the army until he was injured. He was offered a government position but turned it down. A few years ago, the Great Obscenity incident took him from this world. His daughters survived, but the youngest was disabled during the same incident. Yen, the younger daughter, had worked with a team called the Steel Cutting Squad, who encountered Mask while exploring a secret realm. The officers also suspected that Kaijiang Corporation had been harassing Yan's family for land rights, and the investigation into Mask's actions was becoming more complicated. The Monitoring Bureau's director, Arthur, was eager to take action. He wanted to put Mask away without delay. He and Commander Jiang were the two most powerful figures in Day City, so there were no concerns about red tape slowing them down. The commander, noticing Zhao's calm nature, spoke seriously. I believe your actions may have been righteous in your eyes, but you've broken the law. You'll be sentenced to death, or we may send you to the Atonement Battalion. If you survive, you'll be acquitted of your sins. But death is more likely. If you survive the hell they put you through, you'll be able to rejoin society. Mask talked about Atonement Battalion. The commander told him he sounds he have been on the monster front lines. Mask responded, for some time. The commander asked, what was your status during the frontline fights? Did you fight against monsters? Mask didn't answer right away, he had another status. The commander exchanged glances with Arthur. It wouldn't take long for them to discover Mask's true identity. Both men had been veterans in the frontline battles against monsters, but Mask's power and the mysteriousness of his actions led them to believe he was something more. Arthur told Mask he should have known that it's not easy for them to have peaceful situation. In a peaceful environment, the undercurrent surges, and places with slight instability wall fall into the abyss. Especially in front of federal parliament. Then he told Mask it will cause a social unrest once the news spread that he can enter secret realms without the Monitoring Bureau noticing. It will cause the lives of unknown number of professionals, and in serious cases their good situation will be buried because of this. Mask remained silent, looking at his attitude. Jiang warned him this attitude of him will work as an egg against the rock. He hoped Mask will confess leniently in front of Federal Capital Parliament. Mask would love to visit that place again, but it seems it is not possible for time being, as he had been given a mission called the Great Obscenity Reincarnation. It was a dangerous task, one that many had failed before him. A few years ago, the Great Obscenity, a deadly calamity, had nearly wiped out humanity. Its radioactive residue still lingered in people's bodies, waiting for the right moment to return. Xiao had dealt with this before in his previous life. The Great Obscenity was like a weed, it couldn't be fully eradicated. If even the smallest trace of it remained, it would return, stronger than before. Xiao remembered his past life, where he was forced to take responsibility for the calamities that occurred. People expected him to be the first to stop the disaster, but when he failed to act quickly enough, they turned on him. The public treated him like a villain, blaming him for the disaster. But he had learned that he didn't have to take responsibility for saving everyone. He wasn't Mask anymore, and he wasn't going to play the hero role. Arthur and the other veterans discussed their strategy for dealing with Mask. Arthur, now retired from the front lines, admitted that Mask's power was unlike anything he had ever seen. "I think he's cultivating multiple professions," he said. Arthur and Jiang agreed that they had no choice but to leave Mask's fate up to the federal government. In the federal government's capital, Star City, a heated debate was taking place about Mask's fate. The council was divided. Some wanted him executed for his crimes, while others saw his potential and wanted to cultivate him as a hero. However, the most powerful voices in the room were those connected to Kaijiang Corporation, who cared only about their own profits. They were furious about losing their valuable asset in a single night and wanted to send Mask to the front lines to die, just to save face. The president of the council was particularly concerned with finding Mask, the mysterious hero who had once led the charge against monsters. Despite their efforts, Mask had disappeared, and no one knew where he was. The council feared that Mask could return at any time and shake the very foundation of their world. The Federation's council gathered, their conversation heavy with tension. The president listened as his advisors discussed Mask, the so-called criminal. One member reassured him, "We've nothing to fear, sir. He's already given up all his power." The president was unconvinced. "Then explain his disappearing act. What damage can he still inflict with what little he has left?" "Sir, our propaganda machine is working overtime," another advisor chimed in. "His supporters are dwindling by the day. No one would back him if he dared to strike against us." Still, the president felt a lingering unease. "He represents an unknown danger," he declared, his voice carrying authority. "We must find Mask and put a leash on him. For the safety of the Federation, we cannot afford loose ends." The council shifted topics to the escalating monster outbreaks. Reports showed a 32% increase in monster activity over the past month, a grim milestone since the Federation's founding. "This is clearly a consequence of Mask's absence," someone murmured. "Mask was the perfect soldier," another counselor added bitterly. "Why did we turn against him? He never interfered with our operations." "How dare you question the council's decisions?" asked the president. But the room was divided. "Without Mask, we are vulnerable," an elder counselor argued. "Peace makes soldiers weak, and we need to act before it's too late." In response, the president ordered the redeployment of the city defense force to bolster the front lines. This sparked an immediate backlash. "The city defense force is our last line of defense," one counselor protested. "It's imperative we downsize them," the president countered. "Redeploy them to the most vulnerable areas. The cities have been safe for years, we cannot allow complacency to weaken us further." The council's squabbling intensified as accusations of corruption and self-interest flew. But the president silenced the room with a commanding gesture. "This criminal, Xiao, must be brought to the capital. Let his punishment serve as an example for all." Back in Day City, Yan and her younger sister, Qianlu, were released from custody. "You're free to go," the officer said. "You're not involved in this incident, but you may be summoned as witnesses." Qianlu got enraged after listening that the officer is calling Mask vicious. "Why do you call him vicious?" she demanded of the officer. "He stood up like wall of iron in front of Kaijiang Corporation, yet you brand him a vicious?" The soldier responded. "He has the blood of countless humans on his hands. Killing solves nothing." "He killed no innocents," Qianlu interrupted. "Kaijian's victims number in the thousands. Yet you defend this corrupt system and call him vicious?" Commander Jiang, overhearing the exchange, approached with a heavy heart. He agreed with Qianlu's swords, so she asks him, why they guys didn't act. The commander respond, "It's not my place to judge. That is the Federation's responsibility." He believed Qianlu's rebellion is unjust. Qianlu, disappointed, told her sister to go home. But as they walked away, Commander Jiang muttered under his breath, "The anger in her, it's something extraordinary. If only she could channel it." The officer shook head, believing, but in her condition, that anger is wasted as it's just limited to her wheelchair. Later that evening, Qianlu sat feeling helpless. "If there are places in this world where the sun does not shine, I will be that light," she declared. "If such darkness exists, then there's no need for the sun at all." She rose with newfound determination, her anger boiling over. After some time, when Yen came home, she found her sister standing against a wall. She rushed to support her but froze in horror as she realized what was happening. Qianlu's overwhelming anger triggered the resurrection of the Great Obscenity. Its foul energy pulsed through the air, sending shockwaves throughout Day City. Panic gripped the civil defense forces as reports of the calamity spread. Resignations poured in, soldiers feared the frontline was a death sentence. Commander Jiang, mid-speech to calm his troops, felt a sudden shift in the air. His eyes widened. "Commander, what's happening?" a soldier asked, his voice trembling. The commander whispered, "The Great Obscenity, it's back." The soldiers were confused. One of them said, "It's impossible, as the Great Obscenity had been destroyed by Mask." Without hesitation, the commander leapt from the skyscraper window, shouting orders as he fell. "Evacuate Day City immediately." Day City was bustling, as it always was, with life continuing on as if nothing had changed. News of Mask's capture 3 days ago filled the airwaves, with the civil defense force claiming victory over the suspect responsible for the Kaijiang building massacre. The city was peaceful, as citizens carried on with their daily routines. The warm weather had brought a refreshing spring, and pink flowers began to bloom throughout the city. A young man, admiring the blossoming flowers, thought it was simply the result of the season. But as he watched, he noticed something strange. The flowers were growing at an unnatural pace. Curious, he observed further. A bumblebee landed on one of the flowers, and in an instant, the flower consumed it whole, transforming into an even more vivid blossom. It was then that he felt a chill run down his spine. The flowers were not just a sign of spring, they were something far more sinister. His brother, standing beside him, noticed his distraction and asked, "What's wrong?" "The light's green, let's go." But before the young man could reply, his body suddenly vanished, leaving behind only a trail of delicate petals floating on the breeze. The brother called out, but the sight before him was too disturbing to understand. He had already vanished, just like that. The citizens around him were oblivious to the dark transformation unfolding around them. As the rose-headed beasts began to emerge, the once peaceful streets of Day City came into chaos. The city was no longer just a place of life, it was becoming a garden of horrors. The flowers that had blossomed were part of a greater, darker force. Some residents had already been transformed into grotesque rose heads, their heads replaced by massive, blooming roses, and they roamed the streets, growing larger and more dangerous with each passing moment. A hero arrived, armed with a broadsword. He attempted to save the civilians, his charisma bright and encouraging as he leapt into the fray. "Fear not," he yelled, ready to fight. He swung his sword with practiced precision, slicing through the amalgamations in his path. But, as quickly as he arrived, he was consumed by the flowers, his body disappearing into the sea of petals. His last words were nothing more than a faint whisper as the petals closed in around him. The professionals watching the scene unfold knew instantly what this meant. The Great Obscenity had returned, but this wasn't quite like they'd anticipated. These were not decaying, monstrous creatures. No, they were growing, multiplying, and taking over at an exponential rate. The situation was growing more challenging by the second. The civil defense force was outnumbered, and despite their best efforts, the enemy's numbers were increasing at an alarming rate. "This is bad," the commander said. "The world is doomed if we don't stop this here." The defense force quickly sprang into action, working to contain the growing threat. The streets were filled with chaos as the rose heads emerged, one by one, overtaking any citizen unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, no matter how many they cut down, it was clear that every effort to stem the tide was futile. The rose heads continued to spread, consuming everything in their path. As the commander ordered the civilians to flee, he stepped forward, preparing to use his dragon's breath, a powerful blast of fiery energy. The flames roared through the city, scorching everything in their path. But the result was not what he had hoped for. As the rose heads burned, their petals scattered on the wind, spreading the infection further. The flames did little to stop them. In fact, they only helped the disease to spread faster. Even in the ashes, the Great Obscenity's pathogens passed on, reaching new hosts through the remnants of the fire. What had once been a city filled with life now resembled a dying garden. It was as if Mother Earth herself had turned on humanity, reclaiming what was hers in the most terrifying way possible. The petals of the roses danced in the air like a sickly breeze, sweeping across Day City, as the infection began to grow beyond anyone's control. The battle had only just begun. Day City was drowning in a sea of green. No humans remained visible in the streets, and none were safe. Orders circulated swiftly. Fire only made the infection worse. The plan was clear: contain the spread within the city limits, no matter the cost. The infection's nature was terrifyingly efficient. It assimilated humans as if they were nothing more than fuel. Arthur finally caught up to the commander, both men burdened by the weight of their challenging circumstances. They brainstormed in hushed tones, their minds racing against time. Arthur, having witnessed the first calamity, was certain they faced the great obscenity once again. But something felt different. This isn't just the same obscenity, he wondered how could it come back. Jiang explained, this one, it's evolved. It's reached a level they never imagined possible. This is like a jellyfish in nature, one that reverts to a juvenile state after reaching maturity, cycling through life endlessly. Immortal in theory. But even that jellyfish isn't truly immortal. A disease or predator can end its cycle? He further explained, it has evolved from the original, it must have weak points. The original radiation may have lain dormant, mutating over time. This is what we failed to eliminate years ago. Arthur sighed heavily. The mask warned us. He told the government to treat every victim, to eradicate all traces of radiation. But the funds he secured were embezzled. They ignored him, ultimately leading to this. The commanders told Arthur there'll be time for blame later. Right now, he needs your monitoring team to track its energy source. He wants constant updates on any signs it's spreading beyond the city. Also, locate the core of its power, fast. Arthur warned the commander, but commander told him I have no choice, its strength hasn't surpassed rank 9 yet. If there's any chance of stopping it, it's now. Once it fully matures, it'll be unstoppable. Time isn't on our side. Arthur hesitated but relented. I'll get you the data you need. Just promise me you'll be careful. Meanwhile, the world watched. As chaos unfolded in Day City, the world tuned in. News outlets from Sky City and beyond reported on the calamity, their anchors struggling to mask their fear. But modern media was only part of the story. Social platforms and live streams buzzed with speculation and updates. Despite humanity's betrayal of the mask, his name dominated the conversation. People demanded his return, their desperation outweighing their pride. He was both the solution and the scapegoat. The irony was not lost on anyone. In a world on the brink of collapse, humanity couldn't resist the urge to update their social feeds. The commander's search led him to the heart of the calamity. Towering above the city on a massive flower, Qianlu awaited him, serene and otherworldly, a goddess in appearance but a monster in essence. You're like so many I've seen before, the commander began. When the world doesn't bend to your will, you impose your version of order. History is full of humans worshipping monsters like you, claiming you're some divine reincarnation. But in the end, even your followers will see the truth. Arthur's voice crackled over the commander. Commander, that girl you met earlier? She's gone. She is a monster now. The commander tightened his grip on his weapon. He knows what he is facing. Qianlu's smile was eerily calm. Regret meeting me, Commander? The only thing I regret, he said, is not finishing you off when you were still in that wheelchair. In a blur, the commander unleashed a powerful energy beam, its trajectory precise. The blast struck Qianlu's head, obliterating half her skull. The strike would have felled any normal foe. The cameraman, capturing the scene for the world to see, exclaimed, "All hail the commander. The hope of Day City." But the celebration was premature. Qianlu turned her head slowly, a grin spreading across her face as if she'd merely felt a breeze. Her wounds began to regenerate instantly. Is that all? She asked, her tone dripping with mockery. The commander got astonished. It only took Qianlu a few seconds to regain her previous human resemblance. The commander knew her rapid regeneration only spelled trouble for his attempts to save his city. This is crazy, he muttered. Half her face was gone just now. Why isn't she dead yet? Isn't she just a monster? He resolved to hit harder, to keep fighting until she didn't get up. But his attacks proved fruitless, her regeneration was simply too strong. Is this the so-called sunlight that dispels darkness? She mocked. Her killer intent filled the air, and the commander retreated instinctively, but it was useless. She was faster. Before he landed, she was already on the offensive, closing in from behind. Her taunts echoed in his ears as they clashed at breakneck speed. The cameraman, tasked with broadcasting the battle, couldn't keep up with their movements. The city itself seemed to betray the commander. Plants, now infected with her essence, were everywhere, offering her infinite mobility. Arthur, observing the fight from afar, clenched his fists. He believed the commander doesn't stand a chance. He needs to retreat, or he will die. But the commander had no time for retreat. He knew that failure here would result in the use of the government's ace in the hole, something he couldn't allow. He stood firm, determination flashing in his eyes. "It's all or nothing now," he said, shrugging off his jacket. The air began to hum with elemental energy as beams of light shot skyward. The commander was activating his ultimate release, burning every ounce of his life energy to achieve a temporary surge in power. Arthur, watching through his instruments, whispered, "He's preparing a suicide attack, but this wasn't about dying. This was about giving everything he had." His energy spiked, elevating him temporarily from level 7 to level 8, but at a cost. If he survived, he would be reduced to a powerless mortal. Qianlu tilted her head, unimpressed. "Is this what a trapped animal looks like?" "No," Jiang growled. "This is me, living every second to the death." With a blinding flash, he launched himself at her, his fists moving faster than her mind could react. His blow landed, and half her body was obliterated. But the infection began to take hold, clinging to his exposed skin. He screamed as his elemental lightning burned it away, the pain unbearable. Meanwhile, Arthur was analyzing data from the battle when a realization hit him. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, studying the energy spikes. Unless... He thought of the myth of Antaeus, a being invincible as long as he remained in contact with the earth. "She's using the city itself as her power source," Arthur concluded. "The plants, the people, everything. As long as she's here, she's immortal. She's Legion. One, but also many." The Monitoring Bureau was the first to notice a significant shift on the battlefield. Qianlu's energy was spiking at unprecedented levels, surpassing anything recorded in history. Her power was rapidly outstripping the commander's, growing faster than the Bureau could comprehend. The Great Obscenity was clueless about how far humans could push themselves by burning their life force. But even at his peak, the commander seemed outmatched. All his life, Qianlu had dreamed of wandering the world with her sword, protecting the innocent and dispelling darkness. Yet here she stood, fighting against odds that were far beyond his reach. Her voice broke through the chaos asking, "Jiang, you had the power to save, yet you let so many drown in the dark. I need to know, why did you make this choice?" As if in answer, the creatures of the city shrieked in unison, their voices merging into a single word, "Why?" They surged toward their goddess, abandoning their attacks on the civil defense soldiers. The soldiers, panicked, barely held their ground. When the shadow of Qianlu's transformation engulfed them, they realized the true depth of the calamity they faced. Vines coiled and twisted around her, reshaping her into a towering figure of destruction. The commander stood defiant, his voice cutting through the despair. He said, "It's because of this damn world. In this world, death is nothing new. Living isn't new either." Around the globe, news outlets prematurely celebrated the commander's supposed victory. Crowds cheered as fragments of the battle streamed live, but their joy was short-lived. As the commander advanced toward Qianlu's core, she sneered. "Since being alive is nothing new, why don't you go to hell along with everything in this damn world?" Her retaliation was swift and merciless. She struck him down with overwhelming force, scattering his body like petals in the wind. It was over. Commander Jiang was gone, erased from existence. The world froze in shock. A woman, watching from afar, shielded her own child from the horrifying broadcast. Among the chaos, whispers began to spread. "This is why we need the mask." As Qianlu's presence loomed over Day City, the world's lingering obsession with the mask resurfaced. Even in exile, his name carried hope and controversy. In a high-security prison, Mask remained calm as evacuation procedures began. Meanwhile, the president of the Federation erupted in anger. "Why can't we get a single high-level professional to act?" he asked. "If we wait any longer, there won't be a city to save," he said furiously, remembering the sacrifices of the past. "If only we hadn't been so ruthless toward the mass." A grim suggestion was reached, the time had come to deploy their trump card. Everyone is suggesting using nuclear weapons to fight against the undefeatable monster. Everyone is trying to persuade the president to use the nuclear weapons, stating this will stop the spread. It will only result in sacrifice the few people, but in return it will save the many. As the world braced for destruction, reports emerged of something racing toward the calamity at breakneck speed. For a fleeting moment, hope ignited. "Is it a hero?" the president asked. "No," came the chilling reply. "It's another monster."